We're just talking about the lab. Okay, so just take out a piece of paper and you're going to design a lab to launch a projectile horizontally off the table. So why don't you first just think of how you're going to launch some ball off the table where you want it to not have vertical, you want it to be strictly horizontal, and you want to be able to replicate that. Because when you do some kind of experiment, you have to repeat something multiple times. So you don't just do something once and collect one trial, right? You have to replicate that 4 or 5 times, get an average. So how are you going to get that ball to go off the table without vertical bounce and be able to replicate that? Then you're going to want to measure how far it goes. So think about how you're going to measure how far it went. And then you're going to, I have some instrumentation to help you figure out. Well, let's talk about that. So something called a photo gate. And the photo gate tells you the time it takes for something to go through it, like a ball. Why don't you see, what would you do with that time? You're going to have to predict a distance, and then you're going to have to measure a distance. So you're going to have to predict how far something goes, and then you're going to have to measure how far it goes for something launched horizontally. So why don't you just start thinking, writing down what you're going to do to launch that horizontally, replicate it the same way every time, use that photo gate to help you. So you're obviously going to be working on the same lab tables. We're only looking at projectiles launched horizontally. So think of your 2 equations for projectiles launched horizontally. Will everyone be here tomorrow? Okay, good. Will we work with the same lab groups as last time? If you want to talk with your lab partner, you can. So, Rihanna and Alyssa, you weren't here last time. So you two can work together, and then there's the remote student will be coming, and she can work with you also. Think of how you're going to use that photo gate that can tell you the time it takes for the ball to go through. You're going to be predicting the distance, and then you're going to be measuring the distance, getting a percent error between the two. Think of what you can figure out from just your setup. Look at your two equations that you're working with. What can you figure out from just the setup? Can anyone tell me? What can you determine? So you're going to be in the lab. You're going to be rolling that off the table somehow. What value can you just figure out from your apparatus, from your setup, without using any photo gate or anything?
Acceleration.
Well, when it's in air, we do know the acceleration, but we already knew what that was, right? When it's in free fall, we know it's going to be 9.8. But what requires measurement that we can figure out and can help us? What? Right, good. You can get the height of the table, and then what can you figure out from the height of the table? The time of flight. So that certainly helps in predicting it, right? Now you're going to need that time of flight for predicting how far it goes, but you're going to need something else too. What else do you need besides time of flight to figure out how far it goes?
Velocity.
Right, you're going to need that initial velocity. So that's where the photo gate comes in. Think of how you're going to figure out your initial velocity from the photo gate. I told you, it tells you the time it takes for something to go through it. How would you use that photo gate to get your velocity? Anybody have any ideas?
You can measure um, how far the projectile goes and divide it by the time that you get from the photo gate.
Okay, so the photo gate gives you the time for the ball to pass through. Okay, so that time, the time of how far it goes is the time of flight that we said you get from the table. But the time to pass through just that little spot is a different matter than the other time and how far it goes. We're looking for just V0. Well, maybe one of you will think of it tonight, and when we start out tomorrow, you'll have the idea for how you're going to use that photo gate to get your initial velocity. Maybe if you wake up during the night and you got nothing to do but think about it, it'll occur to you. Okay, so we will do the lab tomorrow,